My image defines my worth.
I must stay positive.
I'm fine. No one cares.
I am unlovable.
I must do it
My
alone.
story isn't important.
It's okay to be honest. I am enough.
Somebody cares.
I do not have to do this alone.
I am imperfectly perfect.
My beauty comes from within.
My voice matters.
I am loved. It's okay to not be okay.
My story has value.
All right, so we are going to talk about another lie, and this would be the 9th one that we have talked about. And I think, as I've said before, that these are parts of our journey, right? They're all parts of who we are, and to put a number on it, like, oh, this is the 9th one, but in reality, like, we probably feel different effects or aspects of these each day in different ways. Some days we notice them, some days we don't. But this one is the idea that I always have to be positive. And I think maybe we have, maybe we haven't. I shouldn't assume we've all heard this phrase, but this idea of toxic positivity. I think that's another way to look at this theme. The lie is I always have to be positive, but maybe what we call it from the outside looking in is this like idea of toxic positivity. So let's just jump in right there. What are your thoughts around this? How does this kind of lie that you can believe sometimes play out in your life?
I think that, it's important to be positive because if you're always negative, you're going to live a pretty negative life. And I think your outlook on life and you know, how you see yourself and things happening, if you're negative, most of your experiences are going to be negative. But I think sometimes with that toxic positivity, it's very different than keeping your head up. I think positivity should just be keeping your head up, and I think acknowledging, saying, okay, I'm okay, you know, I'm really struggling right now, but we're gonna get through this, or whatever. But I think sometimes toxic positivity is when you're struggling with something and you're like, I'm fine. Kind of like what we talked about earlier with I'm fine, is that sometimes you're not fine and you have to cut yourself some slack and give yourself some time to whatever you need. So sometimes I like to cry and just give yourself some time to feel. But just sometimes I feel like with positivity, we push it aside. We're like, okay, think about all the things that are happy in my life and not all the things that are sad. And I think sometimes instead of just pushing those thoughts and feelings aside, we have to just figure them out with a positive mindset and not
Yeah, and I think sometimes this idea of being positive and where it becomes this lie that we tell ourselves of always having to be positive is I hear you're describing kind of finding perspective, right? Where I think, being positive is finding perspective. But if something's not going well or you are feeling really down, I don't know if we do ourselves any favors by knowing we don't feel that way and being like, oh, but there's so much good. Yeah, there perspectives there is, and that's okay to acknowledge. But I think even within that, it's okay to acknowledge that even with these good things going on, I still feel this way. And being able to live into that and feel that allows us to heal from that, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think, going off of what you were saying, when I think of toxic positivity, it kind of makes me feel like it's not, it's saying it's not okay to be sad, which is a lie. It's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, these are your feelings, you should feel these things. And so I feel like for me, toxic positivity is when I'm in a bad mood when I wake up and I'm okay, get out of bed and go work out or go do something productive so then it can fuel your day. When sometimes I do that and it doesn't fuel my day, I just end up feeling worse. So I feel like sometimes you don't have to push yourself every day.
Yeah, if you're not happy, there's a reason for that. And I think feeling emotions is especially negative ones is healthy. You're supposed to. That's just a human experience. And I was given some advice to just smile through the pain. I would not recommend that strategy because it's not genuine. It's manufactured, and no one can relate when it's not real. You can't feel good if you don't actually feel good.
That's so true to say. I mean, I feel positivity, like when we talk about this, it's such a hard thing to like wrap our minds around because there's so many different ways that different people view it. And so like for myself personally, it's like when I go up to somebody, like a close friend, and they ask me how I'm doing, and I share honestly, and then they just look back at me and be like, oh, well, so-and-so is struggling more, or like, just look at the good things, or like to me that is like positivity back to me, instead of like digging in and saying, tell me more, how do you feel about that, or tell me more of how I can help you. That is now looking more at the positive side of digging into your feelings and digging into ways that you can be supported of that. And like going through your day of, you're going to have a bad day. It's just part of life, and that's okay. And to know that it's okay not to always be okay throughout your day. But it's still also, because you had a bad day doesn't mean that your whole day was bad. It's okay to find that positive part of it of like, hey, I got lunch with a friend. The rest of my day wasn't so good, but that was positive.
Yeah, and I think to most of these conversations, because that's the way they're set up, is that we are kind of sharing our personal experience of how we break down these lies, how we feel these lies, and then how we work through them, right? But I think there's the other side, especially with this topic, is we also play roles that affect our own mental health when we hear somebody sharing something. How we respond is part of our mental health journey too. We do say how someone responds to us is part of it. I don't want to disregard that at all, but how we respond is too. And I think with this topic, with this always being positive, is a really big example of that. To Steph's point, if you're sharing how you're feeling, if the first thing someone responds with, well, at least it's not like this person, or, well, this thing's really good though, so why are you feeling this way? Versus like, oh, I really hear that. Like I hear you. I think there's something that kind of puts some reality around. We can be positive, but we don't have to make it something it's not either.
And I think that sometimes you're just really feeling down, and sometimes it's okay to get it out. You just sometimes need to just talk to somebody about it. And sometimes it feels good to be really negative. Sometimes it just feels good to list all of the things in your life that are going bad. And then you can go back and say, okay, how can I fix this? But I think, doing it and then right away being okay, other people have it worse. It's not that bad. I don't actually feel that bad. And then just ignoring it. That's when it comes to a toxic positivity point of view. And I don't think that other people have it worse is necessarily positivity. I think positivity is thinking about your own situation and acknowledging how it makes you feel, and then moving on and helping yourself to get through that.
Yeah, the being willing to list it out and sit in that for a minute, it made me think about this thing that happened on one of the trips I had the opportunity to lead this summer. There was a group of us that went by the lakeshore, and there was just kind of a feeling in the air that people were feeling big feelings, right? And for whatever reason, it kind of naturally happened, but we all picked up a rock and squeezed what we were holding on to into the rock. And we laughed and giggled about it a little bit too, but there was that idea of it's okay to squeeze that in there, but then not in the sense of oh, it's all better now, I threw this pretty rock in the lake, but in the sense of there's freedom in letting that out there, acknowledging that that's real in my life, and not just pushing it away because you have to be positive.
I think it's so important not to hold it in, because the more we hold it in, the deeper something else might happen. or the deeper you might go down your depression or different thoughts. So I think it's so important to find that person that you trust and be able to talk to them through it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for this conversation, for leaning in on this and talking. I think all these topics obviously are super important, but like talking about this one where there seems like there's such a fine line here, but one that I think we need to kind of bring out into the open and talk about. So thank you for being part of that. Hey everybody, today we just heard this conversation around always having to be positive. We heard this phrase, toxic positivity, that sometimes we get so convinced that we can almost just happy our way through things. But reality is that there is reality. That sometimes we feel the way we do. And maybe it isn't always positive. I think this is a big part. All of these topics, all of these things are important. I think this really helps us realize this is where we need someone to talk to, where we can offer to be someone to talk to. That's why we do this, 10 for 10, so we can continue to have these conversations. The conversations that you have been watching on these videos throughout the past days are the beginning of conversations that you can continue to have in your life with family, friends, and so much more. There's more resources around this topic below, and also the continued resource of help that's available in any situation that you may be experiencing when it comes to mental health. Know that it's okay to not be okay. Know that it is okay to be honest with how you feel. And that there are people around you that love you and can hear that and listen to you. You are enough. We'll see you tomorrow for day 10 of 10 for 10.